want to talk in general terms about a strategy for libertarian socialists. And I emphasize a strategy. This is my view of it, and I do welcome your feedback on it. I think it incorporates three aspects. I'm going to run through those briefly and then expand upon them each a little more as I continue my comments. First of all, I think each of us needs to strive to become a better human being at all times. Bet you weren't expecting that one. I'll talk about why in a little bit. Number two, and this is more familiar to anarchist and libertarian socialists, is supporting alternative institutions and movements that empower ordinary people and show them that they can have more of a voice and more control over their lives. Also to work within these in a way that demonstrates the ability to work together consensually and cooperatively. And then finally, and this is less familiar and maybe more controversial to libertarian socialists in general, is an electoral strategy, one in which you're not trying to take over the state in order to exercise power, but you're trying to work within the state to reduce its coercive aspects and promote its more consensual aspects, however embryonic and weak those may be. Without having some role within the state, you're constantly subject to being oppressed and repressed by the state. All right, let's go through those a little bit more fully. First one, striving to become a better human being. Now, the biggest obstacle to anarchist or libertarian socialist, where you're trying to get people to believe in a world where human beings can work together cooperatively and in peace without structures of domination backed up by the use of force or coercion, violence really, threat of violence. People don't believe that's real. They may think, yes, there are some people like me, who will work in a productive way without having to be forced to do it, who will treat other people respectfully, who won't hurt other people or steal from them. They believe some people are capable of that, but there's always those other people we need the state to protect us from. And whether those people are defined by skin color or cultural background or language or whatever, it also includes, and most especially includes, socialists and anarchists. Because the thing that the state wants to do, the defenders of our current state based on coercion want to do, is convince people they need the state to protect them from these other kind of people. And every time they are able to present socialists, anarchists, Marxists as people who are threatening, that people that act out of anger and resentment more than rationality or compassion for others, they are demonstrating, they are reinforcing the belief that you can't trust other people and you need state violence. All right, so demonstrating in your own actions that somebody who professes your beliefs really cares about other people, is capable of having respectful discussion and dialogue with them, and who actually demonstrates the ability to work cooperatively and consensually with others, is important. It increases the trust of people in other people, especially those they may fear or not understand. All right, so that's important. Becoming a better person and demonstrating that to the best of your ability, that's always a growth process. Number two, and this one kind of speaks for itself, we have to build up institutions that make people feel they can have control over their own lives. And that means supporting things like labor unions, and especially more democracy within labor unions to make the bureaucracy and leadership more responsive to the rank and file. Cooperatives, whether they're worker cooperatives, consumer cooperatives, housing cooperatives, educational and literature kind of distribution to take control of presentation of ideas, and what else? Mutual aid associations. All these types of things are important. Movements like political movements that are trying to express particular views that people share. All these things make people feel more empowered, and insofar as they work on consensual principles where people are not, forced to follow the lead of others, but choose their own leaders and have an input into decisions made and can consensually withdraw if they disagree with the movement. All these things are important to demonstrating people can work together and making people feel this is possible and I can have a voice and I deserve to have a voice. Now, finally, and most controversially for anarchist socialists and libertarian socialists, is the idea that we should work within the political institutions, electoral politics. And that's because the sense has been that the state is an instrument of violence, and anyone seeking roles within the state are going to inevitably be compromised by it and perpetuate those systems of violence. Now, I would say look at the recent history of the modern state, and of course you see a lot of violence, a lot of repression, but you also see in embryonic form continually striving to gain more hold over it is these consensual processes, these processes that try to empower people and give them rights against the state. I'm thinking here of rights like your freedom of speech, freedom of press, right to assemble, and also things like democratic rights, your right to vote in elections, your right to run for office, your right to create political parties. Of course, all these things are compromised and they're watered down and their obstacles are placed in their way. But if you try to imagine a society based on cooperation and consensus without the use of violence and coercion, it's going to have something like processes where people come together to discuss, have input on decisions, choose people to carry out decisions, hold positions of responsibility that they can hold them accountable for, something like a governing process. And we have some of those things within our governing institutions already. So the political strategy then would be to not number one in priority, but of course, reduce the coercive aspects of the state. I'm thinking particularly of military and police. And you can only do that when people trust that those are not as necessary as they think. So the opposite side of it, and the more important side to focus on, is building up the consensual aspects of our governing institutions. That is, policies that decentralize power, bring them down to the level of the individual, the private institutions, disregarding the kind of capitalist businesses we have right now for the moment. Local governance, local governments, all these things, decentralizing, to some extent decommodifying. I think universal basic income makes people more free in their life to withdraw from the labor market if necessary. So the relations in the employment and working within organizations become much more voluntary and consensual. Legalization of labor unions, all these things that empower people, make it more consensual. One I'm forgetting was making it more democratic, right? Making alternative parties and candidates have a better chance of getting their message out, standing for something different, and educating the public about these things. Okay, so those are the three things, three aspects to a strategy for libertarian socialism that I would emphasize: striving to become better people in order to promote trust between each other, engaging in alternative institution building in ways that demonstrate the ability of people to work together cooperatively, and finally, engaging in the state in ways that reduce its coercive aspects and uphold and expand its consensual and voluntary aspects, empowering aspects. All right, not everybody can do all those things, so you need to choose the area where your talents and abilities are best directed. Each person makes that decision on them for themselves, and I think that's because the only way you can actually believe in an anarchist government is by believing that everybody has some ability to discern the proper role in society.